Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. April 4th, 2023. A smaller week from DC. Half the books this last week, which is good. I mentioned last week so many books, and, Rocky kind of pointed out that, not everybody reads all the books like we do. Very few people probably read all the books. But even so, even if you're only reading 4 or 5 books, that you're just not giving them as much attention as, 1 or 2. So I'm all for the lower count, but again, at the same time, like I said last week, DC just has such a huge stable of characters that, the fact there's no Aquaman book right now, there's no Green Lantern book, there's no Hawkman book, like that's, it's not the best. Batgirls has ended. I want to say Batgirl book, I'm talking Barbara Gordon. So kind of interesting. We know that there's a We Are Legends imprint coming from DC with a bunch of Asian characters. Those characters are interesting. I think they're focusing on the new characters, but certainly a Cassandra Cain Batgirl series would be a welcome return. So again, it's just tough when you have that many books. And then editorially, what's going on DC? I don't know, but all that's to be discussed at a later time. We're here to talk about these books, and I thought it was a pretty solid week. Rocky, what did you think?
I actually thought it was too. I actually enjoyed. I'm actually looking. There's only. Yeah, you know what? There's only one comic this week that I thought was very meh. I enjoyed all of them. I thought were good reads. I didn't. Only one kind of made me kind of smirk a little bit, but so yeah, that's pretty good. Because what was there, like 3, 6, 9, 8 out of 9 for me. So I was happy. It was good. Good week.
Yeah, I'm curious to know the one that was meh. Because I really thought everything was above average this week.
Yeah.
But
it was the Joker for me. The Joker was meh to me. The Man Who Stopped Laughing continues to meander for me.
Yeah, certainly not the best title of the week. But what I enjoyed about that, and we'll talk about it more when we get to it, obviously, was Kate Spencer Manhunter shows up. And I haven't seen her in a while. And even when she did show up in the pages of Leviathan, I guess, was the last time that we saw her.
That's right.
She wasn't really. Bendis didn't really use her up to her potential. I really like the character. In a lot of ways, she reminds me of Renee Montoya, with her issues with alcoholism and that sort of thing. And so, it was just great to see her in action again. As far as the story itself, I don't know. Yeah. One of the better backups, though, this week in The Joker Who Laughs. But anyway, like I said, we'll get to that. Let's kick it off with Adventures of Superman, John Kent, #2, written by Tom Taylor. Clayton Henry is the artist. Jordi Blair on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. Some fantastic covers as well. Clayton, the interior artist, does one of them. There's a Orzu cover, Tiago da Silva, Mike Perkins, and Mike Spicer do a cover. So I'm going to let you go first on this one because I'm really curious as to your thoughts, because I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective, and but I want to talk about that after you give us your thoughts.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm really curious about your thoughts on this because I'll tell you what my initial first impression was reading this, because I was really looking forward to, for me, I know all the hype was about Injustice Superman, and straight up, for me, that wasn't a great sign, even though I like Injustice Superman. I really wanted it to be about Ultraman and John Kent coming to terms and having a confrontation with Ultraman. And my initial reaction with this final page, this is a spoiler and we'll get to it, but that final page reaction in terms, it's shocking. And I was my first reaction was a huge turnoff. I didn't like it. But then simultaneously, I have to admit, the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was kind of cool. I have to admit, it was a cool fanboy moment. What happens to Ultraman? He gets his comeuppance. So as much as I kind of like the lead up, and it was shocking. It was a shocking ending for me. I didn't see it coming. Maybe I should have, but maybe some readers did. But I never saw this ending coming, and it was shocking to me. And it was kind of cool. But yet, the reason my biggest disappointment is we are we are robbed of John Kent truly having a confrontation with Ultraman because of of Injustice Superman showing up and ending the threat of Ultraman permanently. We're robbed of that, and I feel robbed of that because that's what I wanted. But this is apparently going to be an Injustice story with John Kent having an influence on Injustice Superman, who uses lethal force. I mean, that's really what this is. And so, last issue, one of the things that Lois Lane established, absolutely made clear, is that she's worried about John Kent because Ultraman's going through the multiverse, killing off various Supermen. And why is he killing them off? Well, that was never really made clear. What's Ultraman's motivation? Maybe we'll never know. But they're able to track Ultraman. Whenever Ultraman makes a jump to another multiverse, the Red Tornado, the Lois Lane / Red Tornado of Earth 2, can track it. And so they end up on this, they track it, they go where Ultraman is, and immediately Ultraman attacks him, takes out the Red Tornado, and then uses the Phantom Zone projector that they were going to use to get rid of Ultraman. Ultraman uses the Phantom Zone projector to get rid of Val-Zod so that it's only him and John Kent left. And they have a very brief conversation. They're usually fighting. John Kent uses his electrical powers to incapacitate Ultraman, hold his own. But they really don't discuss. Ultraman only teases John Kent about him being weak and pathetic, and they don't really have a conversation about the volcano. What happened during those 7 years? Lois Lane claimed her son was tortured in the volcano. As I've said before, we've never received any evidence whatsoever that John Kent was in any way, shape, or form tortured, other than we've been told that. John Kent said that he was basically incarcerated in a volcano for 7 years. And look how well John Kent turned out. Okay? I'm going to put it that way. John Kent turned out to be pretty damn good. If Ultraman is that good a parent, we could all be so lucky to have our kids spend 7 years trapped in a volcano and end up as well-adjusted as John Kent. How did John Kent not get screwed up? Even an ounce of behavioral difficulty, some ounce of PTSD, something. How did John Kent get screwed up? He didn't. He's a perfect kid. He's a perfect Superman. And so not only are we robbed because at the end of this, we have Injustice Superman showing up, snapping the neck of Ultraman, which is really cool. It's really cool. It's Ultraman being a jerk to, saying, I'll make sure your Lois suffers. And then, Injustice Superman shows up and says, no, you won't, snaps it. It's a cool fanboy moment. So it's an epic moment. If you're a fan of Injustice Superman, it's great. But I don't want Ultraman to die. I love Ultraman. I love hating him. Well, I don't want him to die. Who wants Ultraman to die? That's ridiculous. He's an awesome character of Earth 3. We learned more about Ultraman through Jeff Johns during Forever Evil. We interviewed, who was the writer we interviewed who did the Crime Syndicate series? That was Andy, was it Andy something? The writer.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, but he did Andy a great job too. What's that?
I think it was Andy Smith.
Yeah,
Andy Schmidt.
Yeah, he did a good job too. Made some token attempt at Ultraman's characterization. Here we get none. So we'll never know what Ultraman's motivation was, keeping John Kent trapped in a volcano. Did he have son issues, father issues, family? Why? We don't know. And now we're robbed of that. And in lieu of Injustice Superman, and I personally find it, Tom Taylor robs me of the story that I want him to tell in favor of a story that he chooses to tell. And now we're supposed to be all teary-eyed because Injustice Superman, he sees Lois's eyes in John Kent's eyes. He sees his dead Lois's eyes in John Kent. And that's all well and good. And it's good character moments. But it's not the story that I wanted. But this is the story that we're going to get. And don't get me wrong, it might be really good. Okay, I'm kind of a hypocrite here because I'm feeling two sides. I'm kind of disappointed, but I gotta admit it's kind of some cool moments here. Okay, so that's how I feel in a nutshell. So I'm really curious to see what your first impression was and if it changed.
Yeah, I mean, my first impression was sort of mixed as well, which is interesting, right? Like a little bit hypocritical as well. Superman doesn't kill. talked ad nauseum about the Man of Steel movie from Zack Snyder and why I hate it so much, and that's the least of what's wrong with that movie is Superman killing Zod at the end. But you can't see Superman wearing the S, Injustice Superman or not. You can't see a Superman snapping someone's neck and not think about Henry Cavill in the end of that movie. But there also was a part of me that's like, man, Tom Taylor does a fantastic job, better than Bendis, in a few short pages here writing Ultraman, of like you said, reminding us why we despise Ultraman, like why we hate Ultraman. Like, God, he's such a just, four-letter word. Like
Yeah.
he's just scum. He's the antithesis of Superman. Everything that's good and inspires hope or whatever, Ultraman is the exact opposite of that. He's more the opposite of Superman than Bizarro or Lex Luthor or what have you. He's selfish. And John even says at one point when they're fighting, when Ultraman, talks about the weakness of compassion and and how he sees the weakness of Ultraman is that he only cares about himself, right? Like Superman is the most selfless individual, and maybe in all of fiction, certainly within the DC universe. And again, Ultraman is the most selfish. So there was a part of me when Superman snaps his neck that's like, yes, Ultraman, you get what you deserve. Finally, it's nice to see a villain get what he actually deserves, like what the Joker deserves, when we're talking about true justice in terms of a philosophical balancing of the scales, so to speak. There is that whole philosophy about, whatever is going to provide the most people with the greatest amount of happiness, that's what we should do. Morally, whether it's right or wrong, we could debate that as well. But there was a part of me that loved it. Like, oh my God, yes, we're going to see it. But there's another part of me, and this is the part that talked to Tom Taylor at San Diego Comic-Con about what this series was going to be. And there's a little bit of a bait and switch, right? And again, it's not done out of malice. But we were sold this book on the premise that it was going to be John Kent working out his issues with Ultraman. And at the final page of the second issue, or next to last page of the second issue, all off the table. So, like, I get it. You want to preserve the surprise and the emotional impact of the story. That certainly was the way it was back then when we were buying comics, off the spinner rack at our local convenience store or what have you. You didn't know what was coming. And if they had talked about this and preview pages had been sent out, then everybody would have been talking about it and it would have been spoiled before you got to the end of the story. And so I understand. But at the same time, it's like, well, wait, we knew Injustice Superman was going to show up eventually. So we know that's going to be part of the story. But now with Ultraman off the table, it does feel a little bit like, not that we were lied to, but maybe that we were misled. Again, I understand why, but it doesn't feel great, that we had expectations or we had, a certain idea in mind of what the story was going to be. And now that's all been subverted. Now, I trust Tom Taylor. I think the story will still be good. I have never actually read Injustice. It's one of those things that's on my list to get to eventually.
It's
I've
great.
heard
It's really good.
Yeah, I've heard it's very, very good. Part of why I stayed away from it was, early on, Joker kills Lois, Superman murders Joker. Again, I'm not a big fan of Superman killing. I know, hypocritical, because I just said I enjoyed seeing Ultraman get what was coming to him. So that's part of the reason I never read it. Now, I say, okay, this story was supposed to be John Kent dealing with his angst, with his trauma, or what have you, that was perpetrated by Ultraman. We did see him sort of lose it and manifest some of the lightning powers, which I think is so cool, right? Because we the whole Electric Blue Superman had his 25th anniversary last year. That's really cool. Ultraman even says that's the hardest I've ever been hit. And this guy's been traveling the multiverse, killing all sorts of different Superman, and John Kent is the one that hits him the hardest. Then he's kind of drained, and Ultraman goes and says, I'm going to trap you in the volcano again and play with you and blah, blah, blah. And I honestly thought it was going to be John Kent that took out Ultraman, and then the Injustice Superman shows up and takes him out. But I say that to say this. Just because Ultraman is gone doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't going to be a story where John Kent deals with the trauma of what happened with Ultraman. Yes, it seems like it would have been cleaner or made more sense for him to confront Ultraman directly until things get resolved. He did confront him directly. It was an epic fight. So now I guess it comes down to a question of how well can Tom Taylor use the Injustice Superman as sort of a stand-in for Ultraman? Like when you think about it, if we put this on a spectrum, right? Like you have John Kent on one side, clearly influenced by the best characteristics and traits of both his father, Superman, and his mother, Lois Lane. Then you've got Injustice Superman, started off, morally doing the right thing and, very much the Superman we all know, and then sort of turned, snapped when Lois was killed, no pun intended, with him snapping Ultraman's neck there, and then decides, well, if I've done that, I might as well take it a step further. Again, I haven't read Injustice, but to my understanding, the rest of the heroes try to stop him. He takes out some of them, kills some of them, and sort of becomes for lack of a better term, somewhat benevolent dictator. It's his way or the highway, but at least he's, making sure that people are provided for. And then on the other end of the spectrum, all the way on the opposite end of John Kent, you've got Ultraman. So you sort of think of this Injustice Superman as sort of a bridge between the two in a way. He's got some good characteristics. He's got some horrible characteristics. So will this actually maybe be a better person, a better character, a better foil for John to see? John Kent probably can't look at Ultraman and see anything of himself or his father, other than the physical traits and the powers. He can probably look at Injustice Superman and identify with him more than he could with Ultraman. So maybe it'll be a story of there, but for the grace of God, go I. Like, I don't really know, but it is interesting. It was super impactful. Kudos to Tom Taylor for surprising me. Even if, this wasn't really, I mean, didn't we all expect this to be a longer interaction between Ultraman and John Kent? I mean, it lasted one issue, and it's not even the whole issue. So I'm not sure what to expect, but the fight was epic. This might be my favorite Clayton Henry art that I've ever seen. Like, I like Clayton Henry. He does have a distinctive style. His faces tend to be sort of elongated. I know some people don't like that. I've never minded it. And like I said, it does give his style kind of its own kind of standout quality. I don't ever remember seeing him do a fight that was this great, maybe with the exception of some of the Archer and Armstrong stuff he did for Valiant back in the day when Archer was using the Kung Fu and what have you. Yeah. But this fight was just so epic. And it was not just the line work and the character placement. It's also he uses some interesting panel layouts, interesting panel designs, orientations, all that sort of stuff. I just thought it was great. And then the neck snapping incident, obviously fantastic. And then the emotionality in the Injustice Superman's face on the final page. So I give credit to Clayton for maybe doing the best work I've seen him do. Like, it's just fantastic. Like, to have Injustice Superman looking at John going, "Oh, you have your mother's eyes." I mean, obviously this is a guy that lost Lois, and to my knowledge, before they ever had a chance to have a John Kent, before they ever had a chance to have a son. So you can just imagine what that interaction between this Superman who's lost his way and John Kent will be, right? Like, is this Injustice Superman going to look at John and it's going to reinforce and sort of validate what he did? Hey, look at what the Joker did. Look at what the Joker took from me. I was right to do what I did because I've lost out on having a son like this. Or will they look at it and go, what a shining example John Kent is for how doing things the right way and making the right decisions. Like, again, there's a lot to mine there, especially emotionally. I guess you'd come to expect that from a Tom Taylor book.
Just a couple of things to pick up on. The one thing that Ultraman and the Injustice Superman have in common is that neither one of them have sons. And Ultraman never had a son. And isn't it interesting that of all the Superman, I mean, Val Zod even stated it in the issue, or it might have been Red Tornado, that of all the Supermen in the universe, most of the John Kents are very young, and in only one of the universe, and they alluded to the deceased universe, is John Kent actually an adult. That's why they couldn't go and get John Kent from another universe, and why they chose this particular John Kent to confront Ultraman. But it's interesting that John Kent. It's interesting that Injustice Superman and Ultraman both are childless, and you got to wonder, maybe the fact that they don't have a son, is that, is that somehow, it's just interesting that they lost their way. And the irony is that, this Injustice Superman might be able to find his way toward the better side of the angel, so to speak, because of John Kent. And so it's interesting. It's also interesting that, what was missing in Ultraman's life that he felt he needed to. I mean, he must have felt some kind of, or desired some kind of bond to John, even though he didn't want him to, he wanted to control him. He didn't want to lose the potential connection that this, although John Kent wasn't his son, he probably has, he thought of him like his son, and, but in his own twisted way was keeping him in that volcano. That's what I was sort of thinking that Ultraman was thinking, and I was hoping to get into Ultraman's head, that Tom Taylor would do that, but we're not going to do that. So but you're right. Tom Taylor might have other ways to try to get into John Kent's head. But one of the things, though, that is I'm going to go back to, that I do find disappointing, is it's this idea that Injustice Superman has something to learn from John Kent. Sure, John Kent is spouting more wisdom here than Wonder Woman. Now, I've criticized Wonder Woman because Wonder Woman is an idiot and doesn't have the wisdom of the gods. But I mean, what John Kent, young 17/18-year-old John Kent, is talking here, he's talking about someone clearly beyond his years, when he's talking about practically invulnerable and still ruled by fear, all that power and absolutely no strength. He sounded like his father. Where is he getting this wisdom from? There was no, I would have thought that the moment he saw Ultraman, he should have been petrified. No PTSD, no immediate fear reaction when he saw Ultraman. He immediately jumps into action like a hero. No fear, no nothing. That's a significant miss for me, because there's no way you're going to tell me he doesn't have some residual fear of Ultraman. 7 years traumatized by this guy in a volcano. There should have been something there, but it's just completely breezed over. And, maybe it's because we're going to have a Superman Legacy movie coming out, and people confuse the son of Superman with Superman in the comics because they're nonsensically calling him Superman just like his dad. I don't know, but I do have, as much as I love the cool fanboy moments here, where's the character growth for John Kent? I mean, no flaws, flawless. 7 years deprived, told his mommy, Lois, that he was tortured for 7 years, and yet shows no evidence of it, either mentally, psychologically, or otherwise. There's been no ill effects to John Kent whatsoever. And why? And if your answer is, well, he was raised right, no, he wasn't. He was, but he was raised right for the first 10 years, and then 7 years of trauma and no ill effects. I find that hard to believe, but I beat that dead horse enough. By the way, I love this series. I'm curious to see where Tom Taylor's going to take it. And I share your hope that he's going to bring it in and make it all come down to, because John Kent needs to come to terms with what happened in that volcano. This issue was called Out of the Volcano. That's the title of the entire issue, Out of the Volcano. Countdown to Injustice, Chapter 2. Well, okay, he's definitely out of the volcano. He's been out of the volcano a long time, and apparently there's no effects. But in any event, I
disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly. There's no effects. John doubts himself way more than he should. He did it throughout Tom Taylor's Superman Son of Kal-El run.
But how do you know that's from Ultraman? Any kid doubts himself. That's because he was aspirations to his dad. None of that was tied into Ultraman. None of that was tied into the volcano.
You don't know that. You don't know that it is. You don't know that it isn't. But my point stands that it could be. And also in this particular issue, John lashes out in anger. As soon as Ultraman shows up and punches him, he fires, full out heat vision at Ultraman, immediately jumps on, immediately starts fighting. That is not the John Kent that we know. Like, he's completely unhinged, right?
Yeah. That's
being,
true. He fought back. Yeah, he fought back physically. Yes, you're right.
And I want to point out, Tom Taylor told us specifically that in his idea, and again, we can debate whether it was a good idea or not, was for John Kent to never punch or hit anyone his Superman Son of Kal-El run. And he accomplished that except for one panel where apparently John punched somebody and it slipped through and Tom missed it.
Yeah.
But so my point being, this is a big departure from the John Kent that we've seen before, and you do understand it. So I think were consequences for that. The other thing that I wanted to mention real fast, I forgot to talk about it, was kind of maybe in a little bit of fan service moment. There is dialogue between Val Zod and John Kent early on this issue when they travel to the place of the latest Superman's death and see Ultraman there, and there's mention. John says, why did you pick me? And they basically say, well, in all the other multiverses, all the other different realities of the DC universe, you're not aged up. It only happened in this one
Other than deceased.
reality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They said
only in this reality did Bendis age you up, and in the rest, yeah, and
yeah.
deceased. And they do make mention of that. There's one other
Yeah.
reality, but it's film people or whatever they say. But so yeah, it does remind people, as much as they still hate the fact that John Kent was aged up. And don't get me wrong, I've sort of come around to accepting it because I have no other choice. If I had my choice, I still would rather John be young and growing up with his parents. But this is the reality that we have,
Yeah.
and it's too late to go back. But that's not to say that you can't still have a Super Sons book or stories in another part of the DC multiverse where John is still a kid. He's still a kid in most of them, and unfortunately, we live in this one where he's not. So anyway, I think we've talked about Adventures of Superman John Kent more than enough. Let's move on. Flash number 796, 1 Minute War finale, one more minute from writer Jeremy Adams, pencils by Roger Cruz, George Combatis, and Fernando Passarin, inks by Williston Diaz and George Combatis with Eau Claire Albert, and then colors by Luis Guerrero, Matt Herms, and Pete Pantazis. Letters by Rob Lee. I'll talk about the art first. Love the Fernando Passarin art. Roger Cruz art is okay. I'm not a big fan of George Combatis art just because it's so stylized. If the whole book was like that, then it would be a little bit better. But when compared to the other art, it's so disconcerting to have the art style change from one page to the next. So I understand that obviously we moved to twice a month Flash, bi-weekly Flash instead of monthly Flash when this event kicked off. And I'm fine with that because I'm fine with more Jeremy Adams written books. But they should have given him maybe a little more time to get ahead, whether that was Roger Cruz or Fernando Passarin or whomever, so that one artist could have done the whole thing. It's so jarring. That being said, I give tons of credit to Jeremy Adams for making a fun story, an interesting story. It completely made sense the way everything wrapped up. Multiple different heroes got to have heroic moments, whether that be Barry Allen or Wally West. This book is called The Flash. We get some great Max Mercury moments. We get some Impulse moments. Linda even has a moment. I just really enjoyed this. And Jeremy gets to play with Gold Beetle again, a character that he co-created who, is from the future and is dropping hints and whatnot. And I love it, right? Jeremy is one of us. He loves these characters so much. We know he's off of Flash. It seems clear that he's got a lot more stories to tell of the DC multiverse. And, Flash is the perfect title for him to be on to tell those kind of stories, because he's constantly, whether it be Blue Beetle or Wally or whomever, a Gold Beetle rather, mostly Gold Beetle because she's from the future. He's constantly dropping of other things that have happened. Oh, don't tell so-and-so this because that hasn't happened yet and all that. So, but I guarantee in Jeremy's head, he knows what that story is. So I love that. I love the hints that are dropped. I love seeing Gold Beetle. I want a Gold Beetle series. I want Jeremy Adams to be writing it as much as I don't. I was saying how DC publishes too many books. And just one other point I wanted to make I forgot earlier. See, the problem DC puts out so many books, it's because half the books are Batman. So you would have room for a bunch of different characters if you didn't put out so many Batman books and overwhelm us with Batman. But anyway, back to the Flash. I loved the comeuppance for Admiral Vell here. It was such a great resolution. It's a reminder that this book, this issue, this conclusion is a reminder that the Flash is a family, which I go back and forth. You and I have both expressed this before, how when you create a family based on a character, it makes the original character so much less special, right? Like think about Spider-Man or Venom. There's so many different symbiotes now. There's so many different Spider-Man, so many different Batman for that matter. And we've got the same thing with Flash. Superman's doing it now, a Superman family book. So I get it, but at the end of the day, it's DC loves its legacy, and this ended up being a really fun series. It started off really great. The best issues weren't in the middle, and it felt like it was a little bit to do with the art and the pacing. But it ended on such a high note. So for me, like the first couple issues and this finale were just fantastic. And again, I know I'm nitpicking on the art, but it just, man, if this whole thing could have been drawn by Passerin or Roger Cruz with enough time, so he could have given us quality work like he did on Robin, for me this event would have been even better. So I probably, overall for the whole event, give it a B. I'd give this final issue an A. But the whole thing could have been an A with better art in my mind. So yeah, the way I felt when I finished reading this was, wow, that was good. What a great conclusion. Redemption for Wally West, even beyond what Jeremy Adams has done before. I know you'll talk about it with some of the Heroes and Sanctuary heroes. But I end up just feeling, God, I don't want Jeremy to leave the Flash. Don't get me wrong, I can't wait to see what he does on Green Lantern. I just, and not to say I don't enjoy Cy Spurrier's work. There's plenty of books I've read from Cy Spurrier that I love, but cosmic horror for the Flash, that's not something I'm looking forward to. This is the Flash that I want to continue. Yeah. So anyway, what are your thoughts?
Time to fire some editors at DC. You don't remove Jeremy Adams off the Flash. Pay attention to sales. Listen to fans. This is not rocket science, but apparently it is for some people. But regardless, I actually enjoyed the art this issue because it was better. I agree with you that while it was not necessarily consistent, I liked all of it. And it felt more, I just liked the art better. It just felt more like a Speedster comic. I really enjoyed it. And I love the Sanctuary heroes. They're alive. And I love that Gold Beetle. We get a call back to one of the early issues of Jeremy Adams where Gold Beetle showed up and where Wally West was in the body of Impulse and Impulse, while Wally was in the body of Impulse, told Gold Beetle, save the other people of the Sanctuary. And Gold Beetle actually does that. She actually saved all of them except for Roy Harper, who ended up being saved through other means. And it's so fun. And all this leading to a happy ending. And yet it all makes sense. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel Duke Ex Machina. They've earned this victory. Barry Allen, he thought of, his plan to reverse time by using the buildup of the Speed Force energies to reverse the Spire. That makes a lot of sense. The comeuppance of Admiral Vell, which you alluded to, Jace, it's the revelation that Admiral Vell is in fact an organic conduit himself. In other words, Admiral Vell himself is in fact a speedster. He doesn't need the organic suits like he does the artificial conduit vests. That the members of the fraction, the army of the fraction, all the soldiers wear artificial conduit vests, which allow them to artificially tap into the Speed Force. Well, those vests are removed, and when they're removed, they of course they're in stasis. They can't move because they're not part of the Speed Force anymore. And the way that they remove the vests and the way that all this battle plays out. And all these moving parts and all these speedsters all over the place. So much is happening, but it makes sense, and it's a fun read. It's a good read. A lot's at stake, and yet the dialogue is great. There's Easter eggs to previous issues, because Jeremy Adams, he was. One of the benefits of Jeremy Adams being a surprise to both readers and clearly editorial, because he caught editorial off guard more than readers, because we readers saw it early on, is that this really is Jeremy's baby. And he really is giving us the Easter eggs, and he can do these callbacks to his previous plot points, and there's payoff here in this issue, and that's what I love about it. And I did early on, like you, I do think that this Flash 1 Minute War could have benefited from more consistent art. I think better art, quite frankly, because I think editorial, had they known that this was, I think this was, they had money in a bottle here. I mean, oh man, this could have been visually even better than it is, but it's ended on a high note, I think, visually, and I love how it ends with Gold Beetle. I can't wait to see Gold Beetle again. She doesn't want to meet Jay because because she's the Gold Beetle is so used to living in different timelines and interacting in timelines. She knows she doesn't want to jeopardize the first meeting with Jay, and she can't meet Jay now, and you could tell she's in love with Jay, but his older self, and it's and then of course I would be remiss if I didn't. Barry Allen runs back to Iris just before Iris is pissed off about to leave, and because Iris was in the process of proposing to Barry Allen when the fraction attacked. That moment, beautiful moment between Barry and Iris, the type of moment that you want. There's just multiple happy endings all around, and final. As if we thought there was already redemption for Heroes in Crisis, but now we got all the Heroes in Crisis heroes alive thanks to the Time Point, the Flash Planet, and we now know that there's an extra power, ever since the surge happened, which happened in Heroes in Crisis. That surge has created a phenomena amongst Flash speedsters that apparently, if they build up enough Speed Force energy, and they won't actually die, they'll be transported to Time Point, otherwise known as Flashpoint, as a way of safeguard. So that seems to be almost like a quasi de facto additional superpower now that the Flash has as a safety point to prevent them from being killed, potentially. As long as they can access the Speed Force, they can perhaps avoid death. It's a way to further protect themselves by transporting themselves to Time Point, i.e., the Flash Planet. So many Easter eggs, great plot points, high recommend, definitely worth something to pick up. I do think this will be a relatively easy read as a trade paperback compilation. I recommend this to readers, and it's just so sad to see Jeremy Adams go. I hope they bring him back for multiple guest appearances. Or hey, look, we got a Flash family. There's no reason why Jeremy Adams can't be writing another Flash comic. Hey, why not?
Yeah, Impulse, or if I don't know who the main Flash is in Cy Spurrier's book. Is it Barry Allen? Is it Wally West? Yeah, why not? A Flash family start. If Cy Spurrier is using Barry Allen, let's say, to give Jeremy Adams Flash family with Wally and the rest of the speedsters, or Wally and his kids. I mean, don't get and everybody don't misunderstand. Jeremy Adams is leaving the Flash, but not yet, right? I mean, we still have another 4 issues. His last issue is 800, so we do still have more to come. And looking forward to what else he has to offer us before he leaves. So, all right, up next we have Batman and the Joker Deadly Duo number 6, story and art by Mike Silvestri, colors by Arif Prianto. There's some fantastic covers on this issue as well, but in the credits that we get in the preview, I didn't scroll far enough back apparently. So yeah, there's a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, a Guillaume March cover, a Mark Silvestri 1 in 50, and then a John McCrae and Mike Spicer 1 in 100. So I give Mark Silvestri all the credit in the world. Now, this is the perfect example of giving a creator the time that he needs to create the story that he wants to create, the story he wants to tell. Silvestri's done a fantastic job of giving us a great story. He's mostly known for his pencils and whatnot, but I have to say that this story is so good. It's so good. Again, I'm a fan of Mark. I'm a fan of his work. I'm a fan of his pencils. But for him to give us this good of a story, excuse me, it's phenomenal. It is so fantastic. And it starts right from the beginning of this issue where he gives us a recap. Like, you could pick up this issue, and granted, you all have missed out on a lot, but you could pick up this issue and just read the narration from Batman in just a couple of pages, and you know exactly what's going on. It is laid out. If you've been lost, if you don't understand what's been happening, it is all laid out for you. Um, and it's so good. It's so good. I'm so impressed with what Mark has done. Um, yeah, it's just a phenomenal job all around by him, and I can't say enough about how interesting and how fun and just how classic comic booky goodness this is. And again, that's just talking about the story that he's given us. Then when you talk about his line work, the textures and the art, the visual storytelling, it's all top notch. And I gotta think, if DC had gone to Silvestri and said, "Well, it's been 2 years you've been working on this. We really need to get it out there on the stands. Let's go, let's go, let's go." This story would be nowhere near as good, right? Like, and I'm not taking anything away from Mark by saying, uh, you know, the story wouldn't have been as good, but it's just giving him the time to do what he needs to do, both artistically and narratively from a writing perspective, to say, I don't know what's changed. I imagine I'll have Mark on the show, hope point, to talk about that. But when you live with the story for such a long time, you can say, oh, you know what? Now that I'm on the end of issue 3, I realized that thing I did back in issue 2, it would be better if it was like this. And he's got the time to go back and change it. Whether that's a change in art, a change in the way things are laid out, a change in the actual story itself, a plot point, story beat, whatever. This is what happens when you give creators the freedom and the time. And I understand financially it can be tough, but that's if you look at DC's coffers, right? Like, let's look at Warner Brothers, let's look at AT&T, let's look at Discovery. They've got the money. Like, this is peanuts, right? When you talk about how much they spend on movie development for movies that don't even happen, or a movie that's completely done and finished, like Batgirls, that you just stick in a drawer. So you can't tell me that you can't afford to pay these artists and writers what they deserve to be paid, and give them the time to give you your best work. Because here's the other side of the coin, right? I guarantee you this Batman Deadly Duo, or Batman Joker the Deadly Duo story, this is going to be an evergreen story. This is going to sell and trade very well year after year after year after year, because it's going to have Silvestri's name on it. It's going to say Batman. It's going to say Joker, and it's going to have fantastic name recognition. And it's been very well received critically. So, just like The Killing Joke, just like The Long Halloween, just like Batman Year One, Legends of the Dark Knight, this book is going to stand the test of time, and it's going to make DC money year after year after year after year in the long run, long after they've paid Silvestri whatever they needed to pay him. So you got to take a longer look. You got to take a longer view and let these creators take the time. And also fans have to understand, we're all sort of used to the monthly release schedule. Maybe that's not, if you want the best work. I mean, we just talked about Flashpoint, how it would have been better if the artist had more time, and we could have got one artist and it would have taken as long as it takes, but again, I get it. The model in comics, the retail model is broken, has been for a long time. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, unfortunately. But this quality story, these story beats, all of it is so good. And this is the product of what happens when you give a creator the time to create what they want to create. So I'm sure Rocky will talk more about the story, because it's really interesting the way it plays out. But one last thing I will mention is, at the end, Batman has a key. It looked like a locker or lockbox, some sort of something, and he puts it around his neck. It's one of those kind of tropey moments. He puts it around his neck and he's like, come and get it, come and take it from me. And him and the Joker go fist to fist, toe to toe, however you want to say it. But here's the thing: I've said it many times, and I'm not blaming Silvestri for this, because this is just a dynamic that the Joker has in the DC universe. Batman with all his training, Joker with none of his physical training. Batman would kick his ass in like one punch, the whole blah one punch. That was Guy Gardner. Joker's even less formidable physically than Guy Gardner. I mean, come on. But
Yeah.
I get why you do it for the sake of the story, and this is the Joker that we get. But yeah, I will always make the argument. Part of the reason I don't care for the Joker is the Joker shouldn't be a challenge for Batman. Long enough time period for him to plan and set up something where Batman's got to go and save a bunch of people. Yes, that's a threat, whatever. But like physically one-on-one, no. Batman beats the crap out of the Joker in 3 seconds flat. So anyway, what did you think? Did you enjoy it as much as I did?
I did, and there's payoff to the story here, and of course this doesn't end the series. This is issue 6. I'm not sure. Is there only one issue left or 2?
Well, yeah, I think one issue left. I think it's 7.
Yeah,
So one issue.
Because the story really picks up here. There's a wonderful, the very first page is a perfect summary of the story so far. So you could literally pick up this particular issue and you're immediately caught up to speed, and it clarifies some plot points. Even if you were somewhat confused, you got one page that clarifies basically everything. And in a nutshell, we got Donald Sims. He's a businessman. Years ago, his at the wedding of his daughter, Amanda Sims, Joker crashed the party somewhat accidentally, and Amanda Sims ends up getting killed. Donald Sims does experiments through his corporation and ends up creating a virus of some kind that ultimately ends up, through all kinds of machinations, resurrecting, essentially under the guise of a cure. It ends up a cure for various muscular diseases or whatever, ends up resurrecting the dead or giving life to dead tissue. And his daughter, Amanda Sims, comes to life, and she's revealed to be the villain here. And the art here is absolutely graphic. You can tell this is absolutely Black Label. There's violence here that you would not normally see in a level of violence that you don't always see in a Batman comic. At one point, Amanda Sims, in beautiful art again by Silvestri, Amanda Sims actually rips her father's head clean off and shows it to Batman. I mean, this is hardcore stuff. And it's revealed that the Joker was actually working in conjunction with Amanda Sims. So Joker was working with this psycho undead bitch. And Joker's ultimate agenda is to get this key that Batman has around his neck at the end of the issue that you mentioned. And we're not really sure what the key is for. But I want to give a shout out to Harley. The way Harley is depicted, I miss this Harley. I miss this psychotic or evil Harley. This is a Harley the way she used to be drawn, not a Harley who was a victim of the Joker, abused by the Joker. She abused the Joker as much as she was abused. Harley Quinn, bring back this Harley Quinn. I don't want to, as some feminist icon. Please, it's a psychotic bitch. That's Harley I know and love. This is a Harley that is jealous. She's jealous. This Harley is jealous of the Joker and Amanda Sims. And she threatened she's going to harm the Joker if she doesn't find out what's going on here, Joker. And I love this Harley Quinn. I love her. I love her violence. I love her attitude. This is evil Harley Quinn. This is the way I like her. Not this multiversal traveling doofus that we've seen in this comedic parody, whatever the hell DC's trying to portray her as in the pages of her own comic, which I'm so sick of. We've gotten a decade of that. Enough already. Bring back evil Harley, bring back Joker Harley, bring back Joker's my boyfriend and I love him Harley. That's what I want to see. Dysfunction, I don't care. I'd rather have that dysfunction. Show me the humor in that.
You're never getting the Harley subservient to Joker in that terrible relationship in this reality. You're just not.
No, but it's not subservient. This is the Harley in this comic is an equal.
I agree with you 100%, but the powers that be see that relationship as toxic. We can argue whether or not that's true or not. It doesn't seem to be a toxic relationship the way that Silvestri portrays it here. Other writers have portrayed it, where she is subservient and she is being exploited. My point being, because of that, in the main continuity, we're not getting it back. Yeah, it is fun to see here. I do agree.
And this is why I think this is just one factor that's going to contribute to this. You mentioned this being an evergreen. That's one of the factors. It's the little thing. They get the little characters right. Batman right. Joker right. Harley Quinn right. The villains right. The violence right. Commissioner Gordon right. All the little things, they've nailed it. Because they don't have
characters like Batman, Harley Quinn. Maybe you've heard of them. Joker.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, though. Yeah. I see. Yeah.
But it's just, this is a fun comic, and this is the way that you want these classic renditions of these characters. And, they're less concerned about continuity and just, it's the Black Label aspect of it, and it just works. I I love it, and it ends with a, we're going to be we have a confrontation with the Joker and Batman at the end of it. But the visuals for Amanda Sims, she looks so awesome with these dark, glooming black eyes. She looks intimidating and terrifying as hell. I want this character to return. I want Amanda Sims to return and be a villain for Batman, not just in this Deadly Duo, but I want her to survive this and actually remain a member of Batman's Rogues Gallery, because she looks intimidating and terrifying as hell. So I love this issue, and I'm really curious. I can't wait to see how it all wraps up.
Yeah, I don't disagree. There's the fantastic scene where Amanda Sims' arm gets cut off and it's still like choking Batman. And then she
Yeah,
goes over and like sticks her stump next to it and it like reattaches itself. Like,
yeah.
yeah, it's just fantastic, fantastic moments like that throughout this issue
Okay.
from Mark Silvestri. So it's, yeah, there's no doubt that this series has been a whole hell of a lot of fun. Um, so
It's
again, whether or not we get Amanda Sims showing up in the regular continuity, I don't know, but I certainly would welcome that. I think it would be a lot of fun. So, uh, moving on, we have up next Fables. This is not a book that I read, so I'll let Rocky take it away. It's issue number 158. Bill Willingham, writer, creator, Mark Buckingham, penciler, co-creator, Steve Leah Aloha, inker, Lee Luffridge on colors, Todd Klein on letters. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, this series has to do, for those who have been following it. This is the Black Forest series. It's part eight of 12, and essentially what's happened is that the Mundies now are known to be in the real world. Their existence is known to humanity, and Big B Wolf wants to take over the Black Forest when the Black Forest encompasses most of the world. But he's competing with a character called Jack in the Green, who fancies herself the most powerful in the Black Forest, and also Herme, the god of trees and beasts. So we got sort of these three characters, Jack in the Green, Big B Wolf, and Herme, sort of fighting for supremacy there. But Peter Pan and Tinkerbell. Peter Pan is a psychotic individual, absolutely psychotic, and he wants to, unlike the adversary who was Geppetto. Peter Pan basically wants to take over, and he wants to essentially destroy all magic. He wants to destroy all the talking animals, whereas Geppetto was kind of like a big picture kind of guy, and those are the words in the comic. He was sort of like the world leader. He ruled many worlds. He looked at the big picture. He wouldn't resort to genocide, to wiping out masses of magical creatures. He would seek to manipulate them and so he wasn't really like a killer in the conventional sense. He always had a game afoot. Peter Pan is different. And unfortunately, Peter Pan, he confronts Connor Wolf while they're playing their wolf games. And he doesn't have Tinkerbell with him. And without Tinkerbell, Peter Pan is fairly powerless. And he gets his ass kicked by Connor Wolf. And he almost dies. And Connor Wolf makes the mistake of not killing him. So we know that Peter Pan's going to return. Ultimately, I'm assuming this is heading toward a big battle between Big B Wolf, the big bad wolf, Jack in the Green, and Herme, the god of trees and beasts. And if you're fans of Fables, you know what I'm talking about. A lot to look forward to. This is a lot of fun. I could spend more time talking about it, but I know a lot of people probably don't read it, and it's unfortunate. It's fun. It's a fun read. And if you're a fan of Fables, to me it's a must read. And so it was definitely one of the highlights of the week. Almost my pick of the week, but I'm going to give that to another comic when we get to that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. And Mark Buckingham's art is fantastic. If you've been following Fables from the beginning, there's only ever been one artist, and that's Mark Buckingham and Steve Leola, the inking, and Leola and Lee Lowridge on the colors. Great comic, man. If you say you've not read on Injustice, definitely a comic book series to read, and Fables too, if you ever have time to give that a look see as well.
Yeah, part of the reason, I think I've said this before, part of the reason that I have never read Fables. So my wife used to watch this show on ABC called Once Upon a Time, I think it was called, and it's sort
Yeah,
of similar.
yeah,
To this, and
similar
God, did
concept.
I just, yeah, did I dislike it? I never watched it, and maybe I haven't given it a fair shake, but I'd catch snippets of it here and there.
Yeah.
And I just didn't. It wasn't for me. Overacting and just
Yeah.
it was so
Fables is better. The comic is so much better than that show Once Upon a Time. Good God. It's an unfair comparison.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe it's an unfair comparison for me. But the whole. I mean, I didn't even hear about Fable because Fables came out way before. It, for all I know, the people that produced or created Once Upon a Time, stole the idea from Bill Willingham here. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's part of the reason I've never read it. So anyway, up next we have Batman number 134. The Batman of Gotham Part 4, Chip Zdarsky writer, Mike Hawthorne on pencils, Adriana Di Benedetto on inks, Tomeo Morey on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. I'm going to let you go first on this one because I have thoughts, but you go first.
I enjoyed this. It was actually, there's a lot of action in this issue. This was basically Batman, Bruce Wayne in this. Batman was just a quick recap. Fail safe. He didn't kill Batman. He sent him into a different part of the multiverse. He lands on this Earth where there is no Batman, where Bruce Wayne has been killed, and there is this red mask villain that he has to confront. And Bruce Wayne, Batman becomes Batman again on this other world without a Batman, and he befriends this Catwoman, and everyone's a little bit darker. And the main villain in this is this guy by the name of Jackson Holiday, or Darwin Holiday. Yeah. Darwin Halliday. And this Darwin Halliday is the Joker of this particular universe. And this Darwin Halliday is actually someone who he managed and was the CEO of a pharmaceutical empire. And in a lab accident, he saw a vision of his perfect self, and the perfect self he saw a vision of himself as the Joker, which he basically saw a version of his multiversal self. So other versions of Darwin Halliday in the multiverse is the Joker. And so his dream.
Hold on, let me stop you right there, Rocky. Because we had speculated that it possibly could be a speedster. We saw him using speed powers previously.
Yeah.
So interesting. It's almost like a mashup of the Flash and the Joker here. Because we see the accident. He talks about maybe his coworkers in the lab or his underlings in the lab didn't like him and they sabotaged his experiments. And so he has a bunch of chemicals. So I definitely got the Flash vibe.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, no, and so it's interesting. I actually kind of like this. It's what I like about this. Chip Zdarsky's he's not pissing around with the storytelling, and Batman is not pissing around. He's right in the tunnels of Gotham. He's Arkham instead of an Arkham Asylum. There's Arkham under the city, and he's going straight for Darwin Halliday, and he wants to take him out. But who shows up? But the Ghostbreaker. Instead of Ghostmaker, he's called Ghostbreaker, and he's got to get through Ghostbreaker, and of course that's the version of Ghostmaker. But Batman has one edge over him in that he's actually fought He's fought Ghostmaker before in his world, so he actually has an edge because he's already familiar with his fighting style, whereas Ghostbreaker is not familiar with his fighting style. So he manages to defeat Ghostbreaker while ultimately being successful in preventing poisonous multiversal gas from being being dispersed all throughout Gotham and through Arkham Tower or the Arkham subtunnels or whatever. And so it's very interesting. There's a couple of moments here that baffled me, though. One in particular, because we as Batman is going through these tunnels, he comes across all the villains and heroes that Darwin Halliday has managed to incapacitate and incarcerate. Namely, one of them was Lex Luthor. He came across Lex Luthor. One of them was the Speed Force. Was the Flash himself was actually incarcerated, and then of all things, and this is what I didn't understand, Darwin Halliday releases almost the versions of the Justice League to go against Batman, and Batman confronts Superman. And the only thing that didn't make sense to me in this issue is, even though this Superman is taken over by Darwin Halliday, I don't know why Superman is afraid of Batman I didn't understand that. He says, "You're Batman," and Batman says, "I walk as a man, but I am your nightmare." And I don't know. Did you understand that? Batman made his eyes roll in the back of his head, and it
No, I was
scared
going
it
to
scared
ask you.
Superman. It didn't make any sense to me. What?
No, I was going to ask you. Like, yeah, he rolls his eyes into the back of his head
Yeah.
to show only the whites and says what he says, and Superman gets all scared and flies off. I was like, what?
What?
Like,
What? I'm gonna have to have Chip Sardasky explain that because on Twitter or something, because that makes no sense. Why would Superman be afraid of of a guy in a suit? Like Superman doesn't have a. He's not afraid of bats. Like I think I feel like I've missed. I feel like I missed a plot point or something. Like
yeah,
it doesn't make any
it may
sense.
be a reference to some sort of obscure
Yeah.
Superman story from the past. Like I literally have no idea. I was going to ask you the same thing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's the one part that just that kind of took me out of the story a little bit. That was a significant miss because I don't know why Superman would be afraid of some guy. And the other thing is, I didn't know Batman knew how to make his eyes go all white. Do you know how to do that? Have you ever tried to
I
make
can't
your eyes go
roll.
white and put them in the back? I don't know how to do that. Do you know how to do that?
I can't. I cannot roll my eyes that far back.
I can't do it
Uh,
either. Apparently, Batman can.
I know there are some teenage girls out there who are experts at rolling their eyes, and maybe they can make him go that far back, but I
Yeah.
cannot.
But anyways, he does look terrifying. When Batman rolls his eyes on the back of his head, he does look terrifying, but apparently terrifying enough to scare even Superman. And Superman was about to use his heat vision. So that's how intimidating Batman is. So if you don't worry about heat vision, as long as you can roll your eyes in the back of your head, you'll scare off Superman, apparently. I don't ask me how, but in any event, Batman confronts, defeats Ghostbreaker, prevents the release of this gas, but then Darwin Halliday releases Leatherbringers or Leather Wings. These Leather Wings, which appear to be man-bat creatures on the people of on the citizens of Gotham, and Selina Kyle ends up. Bruce Wayne, Batman has faith in her, tells her that I know you're a good person inside because this Selina Kyle was seen to be perhaps a criminal, but no, she was inspired by Batman to embrace the better angels of her nature and helps out defeat the forces of Darwin Halliday, and so it sort of ends with the battles are still going on. The citizens are battling the Leather Wings, these man-bat creatures, and Batman ultimately still has yet to confront Darwin Halliday, who, as you alluded to already, Darwin Halliday likely has some superpower involving some kind of red mist. Does he have Speed Force powers? Does he have some other force power? We don't really know yet. We're about to find out. And yeah, so there's a backup as well. But before we get there, what are your comments on the main story?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Right, like I I've maybe been a little unfair, a little harsh on Chip Zdarsky's Batman run. Maybe it's Chip's own fault uh, because his Daredevil run has been so cool and so grounded. DC is not Marvel. Marvel, people say a world outside your window. We can argue whether that's true or not, but it certainly is a little more real than DC. DC is a little more fanciful. So, maybe it was unfair for me to bring expectations and expect this to be sort of grounded and gritty. Maybe Chip's got a different take, and that's what we've seen, right? We've seen this Batman who can fall from the moon and survive, which I still think that's just bad, bad all the way around. Like I'll never be okay with that scene with that comic, but here it just seems Chip just is having fun, right? Like we're in this multiverse. We've got this different sort of Joker, this Joker that to me is more interesting and maybe a bigger threat if he does actually have superpowers. And maybe, I was just saying how in reality Joker couldn't stand toe to toe with Batman. Maybe this version of the Joker can, so that's interesting. So putting aside the weird Superman moment, like you said, this was pretty fun. It was great to see Batman take on Ghost Breaker, slash Ghost Maker. Um, Great to see Bruce recognizing traits of his own version of Selena Kyle in this. Great to see a different version of Alfred, Leslie Tompkins, all that sort of thing. It's all interesting. And it is something I do sort of wish more writers would take advantage of. Like you talk about editorial interference or I can't do this, I can't do that. just put them in an alternate reality. DC's got so many different places in its multiverse. You can tell any story you want, not worry about continuity or whether it fits in canon or not, by just moving them to a different part of the multiverse. So I enjoyed that. And you mentioned the leather wings that show up at the end, because Batman, with his knowledge, having fought Anton before, does put this version of Ghostmaker at a disadvantage. And despite everything that Batman's been through, he is relentless. He is indomitable, and he does, win the day and stop the gas from being this multiversal poison gas from being released to allow Darwin Halliday to harvest multiversal energy from all the citizens of Gotham. So of course, Halliday has a backup plan. Oh, I'm just going to release the gas manually from these, flying man bat-like creatures, these leather wings. And I imagine Mike Hawthorne, he's the artist here, did the design on them. They look so cool, and it's so fun. And it was that moment, that final moment, seeing that image that just, really kind of brought it home for me that Zdarsky is just having fun here. This is just fun. I will say that it's a little bit more of a superficial take on Batman than we've had in a while, but probably, I guess. I mean, Tom King was the last one that I feel like had an introspective Batman, and that run had its own issues, and I know a lot of people didn't like it. With Tynion, it was all action all the time with the Joker War and what have you, and stripping Bruce down. And Zdarsky's, he's kind of in that same Tynion vein, in that this is just action and sort of superficial, and we're not getting the introspection of Batman, which I sort of miss a little bit. But then I only have to pick up one of the other 17 Batman titles that come out if I want a different take. So it's perfectly fine. I'm not advocating for another Batman title at all by any means. But no, this is fun. The Mike Hawthorne art, it's Hawthorne's art. Some people don't care for it because it does have really thick lines. There are times it works in this issue better than others. I think this is actually one of the better issues of his run so far. And maybe I'm just giving him a lot of credit for that final page there with the leather wings, because they just look awesome.
Yeah. Well, as for the backup is, in case you're wondering who the character is in the backup, there's a giant R on Robin to distinguish him. I just sort of chuckle every time I see that great big yellow R. It's the biggest R I've ever seen on a Robin character. But I actually don't mind the costume on Tim Drake here. It actually looks not bad. It ends with Superman is impersonating Batman, so the villains of Gotham don't know that Batman's gone or something. And meanwhile, Tim Drake he converses with he captured Toyman, and Toyman is working with Mr. Terrific, and Toyman has figured out a way, even though he doesn't know exactly where Failsafe sent Batman. Toyman has figured out that since he knows the multiversal energy that Batman has, being in our universe, he can sort of track where that multiversal imprint is in the multiverse. And so it looks as if Tim Drake is on his way to Batman. So this is, that's really all that happens in the backup, and it's clear that Tim Drake is likely going to be, just as things are coming to a head in the main story. Tim Drake is off to help Batman now at the end of this issue as well, and the timing is perfect. And so, just as things come to a head, given the attack of all those leather wings, it's perfect timing, because Batman will need all the help he can get between himself and Batgirl and this Tim Drake coming to his rescue, so to speak. This might be a pretty interesting and fun payoff, and emphasis on the fun you were talking about.
Yeah, I imagine fans of Tim Drake that aren't enjoying what Megan Fitzmartin is doing probably are gonna love this. It is a very different feel from what she's doing, and obviously the costume is very different. I sort of like it. The only problem I have with it is, Tim Drake doesn't have any powers at all. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean he can't do this, but to have him traveling through the bleed and what have you, like, he doesn't have any endurance or stamina or any kind of, heightened constitution, certainly no invulnerability. So yeah, it is like, is this really what we wanted? But then again, I suppose Booster Gold doesn't, but he does have his shield. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of liked it. I couldn't help but see that image of Tim Drake kind of flying through the bleed and being like, man, maybe this sort of a Tim Drake series would do well with him wearing this costume and traveling around. He does sort of selfishly go and see his mom first, which I sort of feel like we would all do that if we had the ability to kind of travel to a different, dimension, or see somebody that was lost or whatever. So it wasn't like huge. It wasn't putting Batman in more danger, or you know, um, it wasn't morally objectionable, or anything like that. It was
Yeah.
just fun, but that was sort of a reminder of who Tim Drake is, and Zdarsky has a an interesting take. I would imagine, because Chip and I are, he's a little bit, maybe a few years older than I am, but it wouldn't surprise me to know that he read that classic Chuck Dixon, I think, wrote a Robin series that lasted, whatever, Tim Drake Robin series lasted 100 plus issues back in the day. So yeah, really fantastic. And also, um, I can tell that Miguel Mendoca, who does the line work, and Roman Stevens, they're sort of uh, starting to click, right? I mean, I mentioned, I think it was the first issue of this story arc for the backup, where the art, I almost didn't recognize it as Miguel's art. It still doesn't quite look like Miguel's art to me fully, in terms of like what we got with was it Justice League Last Ride? It's just not quite as dynamic, but it's still great art, beautiful art. Um, Maybe the colors could be a little bit brighter. Everything seemed to have a little bit of a yellowish hue to it. So that was kind of weird, but man, it was a lot of fun to see Superman impersonate Batman, Batman as well, and go flying up. So kind of reminded me of the old world's finest stories back in the day. So yeah,
Yeah.
probably my favorite backup, favorite art, or part of the backup so far. Right, part three it was better. Issue one was the weakest. Two was better. Three is even better. So it's gotten better all along, which is what you want.
Yeah.
All right, up next, the story that you said was kind of meh. So it's The Joker Who Stopped Laughing, issue number 7. This is from writer Matthew Rosenberg. We have art by Carmine Di Giandomenico, Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters, and then there is a backup. It's written by Ronnie and and Matthew Rosenberg, with Will Robson on art. Colors are by Hi-Fi, letters by Tom Napolitano. I enjoyed this, as I said earlier, because Kate Spencer gets to show up. Does this move forward the story in any meaningful way? Does it kind of explain why there's 2 Jokers, possibly 3 Jokers? What's going on? What's the point of this series? No, it doesn't at all. So I'm still sort of lost in that way. But I it wouldn't be so far out of character to, or far out of possibility to say this issue could be an issue of Kate Spencer's Manhunter series. Other than, would be pretty heavy in Joker, because we get a lot of Joker point of view. We get a lot of Joker dialogue with him sort of narrating. And it does show that Matthew Rosenberg does have a good take on the Joker. I like the voice that he gives the Joker, but I find myself wondering again, what is the point of this story? What exactly is going on? What does it mean? The Joker, the man who stopped laughing. Which Joker's the real Joker? What the hell is going on? I still don't know. We're 7 issues in, but if you set that aside, is this an enjoyable issue just on its own? Well, yeah, it's actually pretty action packed. Like I said, if you're a fan of Kate Spencer, you get to see her in action, and this might be my favorite Carmine Di Giandomenico art I've ever seen outside of a Flash issue. Now, he's great at drawing the Flash because his art's sort of kinetic and sort of wild and out there. For traditional superhero books, it works less. So not that I'm saying the Joker, the man who stopped laughing, is a traditional superhero book, but his art doesn't always lend itself to the best type of storytelling because it can be a little muddy at times. But like I said, this is fantastic. There is a moment where Kate Spencer jumps off a motorcycle onto the police car that the Joker is driving, with Mr. Pancakes and Mr. Waffles along for the ride. And she hammers her staff into the engine block, and the car flips over and does all this sort of cool visuals from Carmine, where he's sort of showing, like with double exposure, how the car is flipping through the air and ends up landing upside down on the roof. It's fantastic. It's such a great visual. It's something that can't really be done in any other visual medium. in this sort of static way where you can see, oh, first the car was oriented this way, and then it was this way, and then it was this way. I mean, I guess if you saw it on a TV show or a movie or what have you, and you could like pause and go frame by frame, you could kind of see it. Um, but it's just so fun. It's just so fantastic. So that really stood out for me. All credit to Carmine for making this a really fun issue. Visually, if I, again, standalone issue, it's enjoyable. As a series overall, I still just don't understand what's going on. And it may be one of those things where this issue, this whole series doesn't have as much context as we need it to have until we get to the end. We have seen that before, but Matthew Rose, and again, if he's doing that on purpose, or that's just the structure of this story, that's fine. I'm not going to play, script doctor. All I'll say is, if you look at other things that he's done, like his Grifter story or Task Force Z, we enjoyed the ride the whole time. Like, it was fantastic from issue to issue to issue. This, I don't know. Maybe I'm just waiting for the payoff still. I don't know. Or maybe it's just my bias that I don't care for the Joker. I'm not sure. But as a standalone, as an action-packed, as a chance to see Kate Spencer back in action, loved it. And it got me thinking, man, I wouldn't mind a Matthew Rosenberg, Kate Spencer Manhunter written series, right? He seems to have a real penchant, a real flair for writing these characters that are sort of damaged psychologically, or some kind of trauma, or have these personality quirks. I'm thinking obviously of Cole Cash. Kate Spencer Manhunter, kind of along those lines. She doesn't technically have superpowers. She's been through some stuff. She's got baggage, much like Cole Cash. Rosenberg, he seems to have a real good handle. It gives those characters a really good voice. So if this ends up being a backdoor pilot, so to speak, to use television terms, into a Kate Spencer, Matthew Rosenberg series, I'm all for it. Now, who do we get to draw it would be the thing. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the main, and then we'll talk a little bit about the backup.
Yeah, it just feels like it's issue 7 already. It just feels like I felt that I've wanted this story to end for a while. But having said that, I feel like this was an action-packed issue, and you can be forgiven for forgetting for ignoring the fact that the story doesn't progress because of the action. It's almost like watching, Fast and Furious number 9, 10, 11, or 12. I mean, really, there's never a plot in those movies, but there's just ridiculous action sequences, and it's kind of entertaining. I will say this. The Joker continuously talking to his driver called Waffles was kind of funny. And when he turned to Waffles with Kate Spencer behind them, Manhunter, and chasing him, and he goes, Jesus, Waffles, what did you do to piss this woman off? And, that was kind of funny. It had its moments. And in terms of the main narrative, I should say that there was one revelation here. The fake Joker, at least the one I think is fake, Solomon Grundy fixes up the fake Joker and tells the fake Joker that he has something in common with the fake Joker, and that is they're both dead. So now what's interesting is that the Joker is talking to Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy is in fact a dead creature, right? An undead creature. So the fact that he sees this fake Joker as being dead like him, that might be a clue. Maybe this, so how is this Joker alive? How does he have some sentience like Grundy does? So exactly, maybe does that help as to who this fake Joker is? Also, just to remind ourselves that last week we reviewed Punchline, a Gotham game, where one of the Jokers showed up in Punchline, and was that the fake Joker? Was that this Joker? Or was it the actual one in LA? I don't know. Because I accused Teenie Howard of not getting the voice of the Joker. It didn't sound like the Joker. Is that because this is the fake Joker, but it didn't really sound like the fake Joker? So my confusion over this series, unfortunately, has tainted my enjoyment of Punchline, the Gotham game. And just when I want the writers of DC Comics to communicate, just my luck, Teenie Howard actually communicates with another writer, Matthew Rosenberg. Unfortunately, I'm still confused. So, but in any event, I say that comically. I think it's I think I do. I think it's fair to say that the fake Joker is the one with Solomon Grundy, and the real Joker is the one in L.A. trying to make it back to Gotham to officially kill this fake Joker. I think that this is where headed. That's where this is headed. But I don't know. Is this an 8 issue series or is this an ongoing? I'm not even sure.
I Yeah, I'm not
I
sure either.
Because at some point
I mean,
this has to end. Because I mean, if this is going to be a 12 issue series, good grief. I mean, it could be, but it just seems like. There's a lot of padding on this, but I agree with you on the art. I mean, the art, D. Gamonico on the art is really, really good. So, yeah. So,
yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say on the cover, 7 of 8 or 7 of 9 or whatever. Wait, 7 of 9? Is that the Star Trek character?
yeah, yeah.
7 of 9. Anyway, the backup, the Joker's running for president. It's as ludicrous and silly as it sounds, but in a way, all too possible. I guess I'll say. You could definitely
Mhm.
see that happening. Unfortunately, but or fortunately, depending on your point of view. But in the end, he becomes king of England instead, which I guess either works. They're both great jobs if you can get them. Um, I did really enjoy the Will Robson art. I thought was fantastic. So anyway, what do you think of the backup?
Uh, I guess it's okay. I mean, it basically he's running for president, and then all these assassins try to take him out, and they seem to be largely successful. But the way that the Secret Service works in this Joker story is that they acquire all the clowns, and so he's got body doubles. And so the Joker running as president continues to get assassinated, but they keep assassinating his body doubles. And eventually America runs out of clowns. At which point Joker says, "Well, I'm not running for president anymore," and that makes the Terminator laugh. And it's comedy. And then rather than become president, he decides he's going to God save the king. He's going to become king of England, and that's the story. So I have to admit, I did get kind of a chuckle out of it. Although America running out of clowns, that's never going to happen. But
Yeah, plenty
anyways,
of clowns not in makeup around here. That's for sure. But the
yeah.
fact that the Joker could actually be elected president is, again, you want to say that that's ludicrous, but based on past experience in politics in this country,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's talk
hard.
politics. Yeah. You can have some fun with it.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's move on. Icon versus Hardware, number 2. Now, the first issue was, I guess I'll say, interesting. Like it really, it didn't necessarily portray Hardware in the best light, right? So, he's supposed to be Curtis Metcalf. He's supposed to be this really smart guy, and yet he's messing around with time travel. And he even says at one point, "I don't care about the butterfly." He tells his own self, "I don't care about the butterfly effect." He's going back. He's trying to change things. He's playing God in a lot of ways. And Icon, being a little more seasoned, a little more experienced, is trying to explain to him why these things that he's doing he shouldn't be doing. So um, it's fun and it's interesting. If not a little tropey because you're pitting these two milestone heroes against each other, but you can kind of understand. Um, and it's just, I don't know, this version of Hardware, he hasn't really won me over yet. The rest of the milestone stuff's been so good, and it's never more apparent than, actually, to go back and talk about the first issue a little bit, when you get the recap pages for Icon and Rocket, it's like these long paragraphs to really kind of explain because the story is so fleshed out. And then when you read the recap for Hardware, it's like one paragraph because hardly anything actually happened in that story, comparatively speaking, right?
Mm.
Um, it's like this guy is being persecuted, being blamed, man on the run, fugitive type thing. So I don't know, just maybe a difference in tone. Maybe it's purposeful. They want one to be a little more sophisticated. They want one to be a little more grounded. Um, but yeah, Curtis Metcalf hasn't come across real good in this series yet. But that being said, it is interesting. It's a compelling story. I didn't enjoy the second issue quite as much as the first, even though there's a little bit more action, and we actually get some Icon versus Hardware here. We actually get them fighting. Um, Other than that, we sort of see the consequences of this alternate timeline that Curtis Metcalf has created by going back in time. Um, and then we get a surprise classic decent at the end. So overall, for all my little nitpicks, I am enjoying this series. And I'll also say that unlike, say, Flash 1 Minute War, we're talking about the inconsistency in art. Even though there's two different artists here, their styles are similar enough uh, that you don't even really notice unless you're really paying a lot of attention to the line work and the style. So overall, it's pretty fun for being kind of the first milestone event, quote unquote. So what are your thoughts?
This caught me off guard a little bit. I, like you, when we reviewed the first chapter last issue, we were kind of surprised, but they were doing the whole time travel thing about, Hardware should know better. He goes back and he's going to essentially change his own origin, and he ultimately ends up killing the CEO of Alvarez Industries, which was the formative part of his origin, and yet he doesn't really seem to care. He even stated he doesn't care if he's changing the timeline, and it seemed to be very, very reckless. And so, but this was like the Icon and Hardware, the milestone version of like maybe a Flashpoint paradox. But interestingly enough, in this issue, we actually get even President Biden that shows up. One of the things that has happened in milestone issues, and you and I have talked about it, is they're not afraid to delve more into political issues. One of the things when you and I were reviewing Icon and Rocket, they wiped out the drug industry in the world, and wiping out the worldwide drug industry had an impact on world economics such that the world powers considered Icon a threat because you're disrupting the drug trade. The illegal drug trade is crucial for the monetary system, or at least that's this theory that the writers were operating on. And so here, with President Biden showing up with Icon and Hardware, with Icon, basically when Hardware changes time, he actually becomes more influential, and he actually develops a mechanism to create more metahumans. And the United States government essentially tell him that President Biden threatens Hardware in this issue, saying, "Look, you know what a pardon is? Well, the exact opposite of a pardon. That's what I'm going to do to you unless you arm and create metahumans for all of the U.S. Army." And that's what he does. And that creates conflict ultimately with Icon, saying, "Hey, look, man, this plan of yours, I know you want to save the world by making everyone, strategically creating metahumans, but it isn't going to work." And ultimately, at the end, what throws a wrench in the thing is Vandal Savage, of all people, shows up. Vandal Savage made a surprise appearance in the pages of when we reviewed it, Batman, Gotham Knights, The Gilded Age, that video game comic. And Vandal Savage, I think, made that a better comic as a villain. And it's very interesting to see here that Vandal Savage, the milestone version of Vandal Savage, shows up. Seems to be a little inconsistently, I guess intentionally artistically rendered differently, because they draw him in different time periods. But I'm really curious to see, Vandal Savage. We know that in the Milestone universe, Superman, did exist, but was killed by one of Icon's villains early on. And so the DC universe, as we know it, never developed in the Milestone universe, but it appears that it did not affect the existence of Vandal Savage. So I'm really curious to see how Vandal Savage plays a role in the Milestone universe. And this has whet my appetite. So, if anybody manipulates time, usually Vandal Savage is the guy that's doing it. And the irony here is that we have one of the heroes manipulating time, and you got to see how that's going to affect Vandal Savage. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Vandal Savage, he shows himself off to Rocket. How's she going to take it? Yeah, pretty interesting. And I do enjoy the boarding school aspect as well, giving a little bit of, like you said, that they don't shy away from politics in the Milestone universe at all. So yeah, I appreciate that very much as well. So, all right. Last book we're going to talk about in detail, Poison Ivy number 11. This is from writer G. Willow Wilson. Art is by Marcio Takara. Colors by Arif Prianto. Letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. Kind of continuing a theme that we had this week in really good recaps. There have been really good recaps this week in a lot of these books. And, at times with what's been going on with the Lamia spores and Jason Woodrow's involvement and who exactly Poison Ivy is, the book has been, I don't want to say messy, but it's been hard to understand Poison Ivy's motivations. And in this issue, I think it's a fantastic job by G. Willow Wilson of giving us a really good explanation. The fact that Ivy herself doesn't completely understand what's going on. She feels herself changing. Who is she? Is she going to take things to extremes like she did at the beginning of the series? Is she going to go back to her villainous ways? How far is she willing to take it to protect the Earth? That sort of thing. And she realizes that she herself is changing. She herself is trying to figure out who she is. Now, the only problem with that I see is, she's on this sort of journey of self-discovery in a lot of ways, but it does, in some ways, I think, mess with her relationship with Harley Quinn to some extent. And so it's like DC's sort of trying to have their cake and eat it too, with who Poison Ivy is, and her relationship with with Harley Quinn rather. But does that work if she's out here trying to discover who she is on her own? Like, so there's a little bit of a disconnect there. Like, if the relationship with Harley didn't exist, I think this would kind of land a little bit better. But if she loves Harley and they're actually in a relationship, shouldn't Harley be a bigger part of it? And I get that at the beginning of last issue, she was heading back to be with Harley in Gotham, but I don't know that necessarily works. And really, I mean, credit G. Willow Wilson. I don't know if this was what she would have, the story she would have told regardless. But remember that after the events of, wasn't it Joker War, or was it the event that happened after Joker War? I can't even keep them straight anymore. Mm-hmm. Where Poison Ivy was finally sort of, her two different parts were sort of reunited. Her, sort of flesh-colored self and her
Queen Ivy and yeah,
and they were merged back together. And it was at that point where she told Harley, "I need to go, find out who I am." And so whether that's G. Willow Wilson was a party to that, or she would have, as I said, told this story anyway, it really works. It really works. And I'm not a big Poison Ivy fan, and this has far and away been my favorite issue of the series so far. But what were your thoughts?
Well, what's the most interesting about this issue is that we get what I think, and I stand to be corrected on this, I'm not a Poison Ivy expert, but I think we get a new superpower for Poison Ivy. She apparently now, through the Lamia spores, if she can possess, because she's with a group of women that they stop a semi-truck delivering oil, because they're activists and that's what they do. And apparently the trucker is not going to stop, which surprises them, and it's about to hit them. But because all the women are infected by Poison Ivy with Lamia spores, Poison Ivy can now, and these are her words, she says, "I think I just discovered how to travel through the mycelial network." And so that allows her somehow to, they literally were absorbed into the dirt and through the spores. And I don't know, I'm guessing that because spores are everywhere in dirt and everywhere in the air, that she can basically travel. She and anyone close to her that's also infected by the Lamia spores, she can basically teleport or transport through the mycelial network, which is wherever there's nature or dirt or something. Because that's what she does. She kind of like gets absorbed by the dirt in the road and then pops back up again after the truck drives over them. And she is also able to, it's almost as if she has a little bit, she can almost mind control them a little bit, or she's got some influence on them. And Poison Ivy here, and it's been hit and miss in me with this series, but it's kind of grown on me. And I think maybe I'm slowly starting to get what writer J. Willow Wilson is trying to develop for Poison Ivy, because I wasn't sure if she had a handle on the character, but I think I'm starting to come around. Poison Ivy is someone, she's clearly going toward the anti-hero route, but she's driven by she's goal-oriented, she wants to do the right thing. She's still kind of searching for what that path is, but she's still coming to terms, I think, with these Lamia spores. There's still fallout from that. And she does seem to have some degree of influence. And in this issue, J. Willow Wilson does a good job establishing rapport between Poison Ivy and not just the one girl in her group that she's sleeping with, but there's more. And so there's there's actually some good character work here, not just with Poison Ivy, but with another character in the group who made a sacrifice herself, who was a former person who a CEO, I think, a female member of the group who basically had good intentions to do right by the environment, but ended up becoming part of the problem. And Poison Ivy actually exercises some degree of compassion, which, quite frankly, we haven't seen Poison Ivy display a lot of compassion, certainly not toward men. Here it's a woman, and okay, that probably has something to do with it because, I think it's, and I don't say this to be, I'm not trying to be controversial or anything, but it does seem that Poison Ivy does seem to have more sympathy toward one particular gender than another. I don't see a lot of sympathy toward any of the male characters. I think they pretty much every male character that showed up here has been killed in this comic. I think I can say that with a high degree of certainty. I don't know of any male that's actually survived. There's no men in this group, but at least Poison Ivy is starting somewhere. She's starting to show some compassion. She's starting to show more empathy, not just toward Harley, but towards other women, and she's starting to have some empathy. And I think, look, I like Poison Ivy as a villain, but, but pick a lane. So if she's going to be more on the side of angels now or more of an anti-hero, so be it. And that seems to be where she's going. Unfortunately, this one character, this one member of her group appears to be, unbeknownst to Poison Ivy, is unable to control the transformation of one of the members in the group into this crazy creature, which I guess we're going to find out what exactly happened to this character next issue. But it's clear that these Lamia spores, in addition to giving in addition to giving Poison Ivy some additional powers and abilities, it also seems to be very much almost like a curse. It's both a blessing and a curse. And so I'm interested in that. I'm interested to see if are these new powers that Ivy has, are they going to be developing? Are they going to continue to evolve? And, and she seems to have developed her own little group here. I'm also kind of curious, is Harley going to be pissed off? I know Harley and Ivy seem to have this, I think they have this de facto sort of understanding that they can kind of sleep with whoever they want. I have a feeling Harley might not necessarily feel comfortable if Poison Ivy shows up with a bunch of women and she's already slept with at least one of them. So I kind of like the drama there. Why not throw some drama in there? Because I always joke with a high degree of truth that the one thing that you can always rely upon when you put a group of women together is that they'll find a way not to get along. People talk about men. In any event, I enjoyed this. It wasn't bad. Oh, you're on mute there. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. She's clearly G. Willow Wilson's clearly taken Ivy on a journey, and where that ends up, how it all plays out, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But interesting nonetheless to see how it's all going to play out. So, all right, so that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail. There are a number of hardcovers and collections and what have you out this week as well. So we've got the Batman Volume 1 Failsafe hardcover. This collects Batman's 125 through 130. We've got Sandman Universe Nightmare Country from James Tynion. Collects that entire series 1 through 6. DC versus Vampires Volume 2 hardcover. Collects DC versus Vampires 7 through 12 from Tynion and Rosenberg. And then there's a deluxe a Batman Spawn Deluxe Edition hardcover that collects the one shot of 2022 Batman Spawn, also the 1994 Batman Spawn War Devil, and 1994 Spawn Batman #1. So back in the day in 1994, there was a Batman Spawn crossover that DC did. It's Batman's first in that title. And then there's a Spawn Batman that Image did, and Spawn comes first in that title. So if you're curious about all those team-ups, Batman Spawn, Spawn Batman, and the most recent one with Capullo art, first two have McFarlane art. So you can get them all collected in one nice hardcover. And then finally, there's a collection for Batman the Doom that came to Gotham numbers 1 through 3, which is sort of a steampunk type Batman from writers Richard Pace and Mike Mignola with pencils by Troy Nixie. So, book of the week. I think you let the cat out of the bag already, or
why don't you? Why don't you go? I went first last week, so why don't you tell me? Because that way I won't ruin it if I pick the same one. So you go first this time. What's your pick of the week?
See, I'm gonna see you say that, and I'm gonna cheat. That's what I was gonna say. You go. Like I
Well,
can't.
I can go first if you want. I thought I was doing you a favor, but I can go first if you want.
So I can't. I couldn't choose. It's a tie for me.
Oh, really?
Batman and the Joker, Deadly Duo number 6 is just fantastic. Like I said, this issue really shows how this can be an evergreen title that can continue to do well and be sold for years and years to come. But also Adventures of Superman John Kent, just for the surprise factor, the subversion, and the Clayton Henry art I thought was fantastic. So I couldn't choose between the two. So I'm picking those both, and one of those is probably your pick.
No, actually, no.
There you go.
I was still as much as I found aspects of Adventures of Superman John Kent not bad, I'm more miffed by the bait and switch that Tom Taylor did. So it's not my pick. I like Deadly Duo, but I'm gonna straight up. I really enjoyed the Flash. I like the ending. I love the ending. And it put a smile on my face. I love the art. I love Gold Beetle. I loved how it all came together. I even love some of the comments of seeing Lagoon Boy there. It was my favorite issue out of the entire 1 Minute War. And, for me, it ended on the high note that I wanted it to end on. And I'm glad that Jeremy Adams still has like 4 issues left before he leaves the title. And so it's nice. To me, it felt like a nice little cherry on top. And, as I said, the nitpicks were maybe with the art throughout the series here and there, but I thought it ended with the best art. And I actually loved the cover as well. And so straight up, this to me felt it's the best DC. It's still the best DC event in years. Quite frankly, if despite all of the minor criticisms I had, I still enjoyed this certainly more than Dark Crisis, certainly more than Death Metal. I've enjoyed it more than any Joker War or City of Bane. I mean, it's just I've enjoyed this because it's been fun, enjoyable, and just moving forward. I'm looking forward to even seeing the characters of the Fraction again moving forward, and again, I get very defensive of Jeremy Adams because I want him to stay on the Flash.
But, yeah, I mean, no argument here. It's unfortunate that he's leaving the title. So I guess that's all we can say. And hopefully he'll get a chance to work on some more Flash in the future. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
All right. Don't forget, everybody, head over to YouTube if you don't already. If you're listening to this audio only, we appreciate it. But head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! You know what to do once you're there. You've been on YouTube before. Ring the bell, subscribe, leave comments, notifications, all that sort of thing. Conversely, if you found us on YouTube and you do want to listen to some of the other audio-only content we provide on the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. So we appreciate the support as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.